A very good day to all our listeners. UCS is back with another informative episode. I am Akash Agarwal, an entrepreneur and the co-founder of UCS. I am very excited to be here on this podcast today, and with me is the chief trainer of UCS, Anupama V, who is also an accomplished lawyer with over 24 years of experience in the legal field. In today's podcast, we shall be talking about romantic relationships at the workplace and POSH. So let's start off. Hi Anupama, how are you?
Hello Akash, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Anupama, last week I was browsing through the internet when I came across an article about McDonald's CEO, Steve Easterbrook. The article mentioned that Mr. Steve Easterbrook had a consensual relationship with his subordinate, and as this was against the company's policy, he was asked to leave the company. This got me thinking, and it framed the topic for today's podcast: romantic relationships at the workplace and POSH. I also remember reading about the incident of Fanish Murthy, the director of Infosys Technologies in the US several years ago. Now, Mr. Murthy was charged with sexual harassment, and in an out of court settlement, 3 million US dollars was paid by Infosys Technologies to the complainant, Ms. Rekha Maximovich. For the fault of an employee, the company became liable. And here I am asking you some critical questions based on the above.
Sure, Akash, shoot.
Based on these two cases I just mentioned, if the same situation had occurred in India, do you think the same consequences would have followed?
Akash, very difficult to answer this question. If you see, both these instances that you mentioned happened in the United States of America. They, in terms of a sexual harassment policy and the law, they are way ahead of India, who just got a law around 9 years ago. Naturally, the policy has evolved, and based on the several cases that have evolved in the country, a lot of changes have also come about. If you ask me whether the same situation would have occurred here in India, may not be, because the sexual harassment law that we have in India at present doesn't specifically address such situations.
So you're saying that, in other words, in India, a consensual relationship between a boss and their subordinate will not be sexual harassment? Is that it?
Not at all. Akash, that is not what I meant. See, to answer your question very specifically, sexual harassment is not really distinguishing between a boss or a subordinate or between colleagues. Now, a consensual relationship has a totally different meaning altogether. Between a boss and an employee, often such situations occur when there is a quid pro quo situation or the use of power play. In all probabilities, there is an assumption that when there is a relationship between a boss and a subordinate, that these two situations could have occurred. And that is why it is very important for a company to be very specific and make it very clear to the employees that any such consensual relationships between a boss and a subordinate employee has to be free from all of these situations. Now, is that possible to do it? In my personal opinion, it's very, very difficult to have such a situation, because if there is a boss having, I'm just giving you a hypothetical situation of having an affair with his secretary, there will be certain things that the secretary will benefit out of this process, and as a result there is high chances of an assumption that these situations have occurred.
Thank you for the clarification. It makes it pretty clear. But now there's a different question I have. What if the relationship is between two employees of the same level? Not at different levels, but the same level. What happens then? It is my understanding that when two people are in a relationship at workplace, it is a private matter and not a sexual harassment. What is your take on that?
You're absolutely right, Akash. When such a consensual relationship is between two colleagues of the same level, the assumptions that I mentioned a little earlier may not arise in this case. But what's very important for these employees to understand is that if at any point in time the relationship goes sour, then there is a possibility that there is a case of harassment filed against them. Now, how do you handle such a situation? I would say it's important for every organization to try and bring in a policy to ask the employees to report to the HR that there is such a relationship, and it makes it easier in case such a case is filed at a later stage.
So thank you, Anupama, for the clarification. Basically, a consensual relationship between a boss and their subordinate is a definite no-no, and between two employees at the same level is okay until something goes wrong. Well, what is the best practice, in your opinion, for any organization to follow to prevent such things from happening at all in the first place?
Akash, prevention is a good idea, but preventing things from not happening may be a little difficult for anyone to achieve. But the views that I'm expressing here are completely mine views and based on my experience. The sexual harassment law at present is at its infancy in India, and there are a lot of cases coming up. In the future, we will see a lot of things that are very surprising and very different that will be coming our way. In case of a boss and a subordinate, it's always good for an organization to specify that there is a possibility that the company can be exposed to creating a hostile situation and thereby even become liable for such a situation. And therefore, it is very important that the company does specify that it does not encourage any consensual relationship when it involves a boss and the subordinate employee. When it comes to two colleagues who are at the same level, I would say, no organization can actually say you cannot have a relationship. It's okay. But it may be a good idea that the employees are told to bring it to the notice of the HR so that when or if the situation turns into a case of sexual harassment, then there is some amount of support that the employees get in terms of the fact that they had a relationship and it was known to the organization. I hope that helps.
Well, it definitely does, and it clears a lot of questions which I had in my mind at least. Thank you for the wonderful session, Anupama. And I'm sure even our listeners would have learned a lot and understood and found this session very informative and interesting. Dear listeners, thank you for your time. Do get in touch with us with your queries, suggestions, and feedback by emailing us at admin@upceedconsulting.com. That's ADMIN at UPCEEDCONSULTING.com, or writing to us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Do contact us if you need our assistance with anything related to POSH. We will be back soon with another interesting topic. Wishing you a great day ahead.